Today is June the 5th, 2006, and we're talking with Jessie Bryan. And Jessie has been a member of St. Andrew's United Methodist Church since before it was St. Andrew's. She was a member of Grace Church, weren't you, Jessie?
1963.
You joined Grace in 63? And is that when Grace started, was 63?
In Jackson Davis Elementary School.
So you were there before they even moved onto this site in the elementary school.
In other words, Ken came to my house one afternoon. It was summertime. School was out, and he explained he was starting a new church. And Kate and I were members of Christ at that point, and none too happy. It was a long way to drive for one thing.
A long way down at Grace and Charles Street.
Yeah, so we started this little church in August of 1963.
Yeah. And it met in the elementary school for how many years before you?
Oh, probably not even a full year before. Well, we bought this property up here, and then the trailer sections were added on.
Where'd you get the trailer sections? You remember?
I don't know the company that we got them from. That we bought them.
Probably.
Yeah, there were 6 of them put together to form a sanctuary.
Yeah.
Well, we had a vestibule like that too. And the house was still left up here that we used.
What did you use the house for?
But some classroom and minister's study, that type of thing.
What year? Did you buy the parsonage in that year, or was that a little bit later on?
It must have been more or less about 66, 67 or something like that before we bought the parsonage.
Where was Arthur Cooley was still a pastor? Was he the only pastor of Grace Church?
No, he was never a member of Grace. I mean, a minister of Grace.
Who was
Jim Goodman was. I'm going to.
Jim who now?
Tim Goodman. I said Jim, but it's Tim Goodman. And when the two churches went together, then Mr. Cooley was given it. And the Grace people were not too happy over that, because Tim had gotten everything started. In fact, we felt like he was being pushed aside to the point, well, he left the ministry, you know.
Is that right?
And went to work for a bank here in Richmond after that.
You ever hear from him after that?
Oh, yeah, he came back here. If I remember correctly, I think he preached the sermon the first Sunday that St. Andrew's was open.
Have you heard from him in recent years? Do you know if he's still alive?
No, I don't.
So he was the pastor from August of 63 until
we went
1968.
merged with the other one.
Okay, tell me about those first years. You met in the elementary school. Weren't many people, I would assume.
Well, by Easter 1964, there were 41 charter members.
Is that right?
Of which Kate and I and Kathy were 3 out of the 41.
How many charter members of that church are still living and active in our church now, or involved in any way in our church now?
There may be 2, but they never come. The Ms. Johnson up here who lost her son not long ago.
Bill Johnson.
Well, she was a charter member. And the Ms. Drinkwater, she still lives.
Dennis's mother.
Yeah.
Okay.
As far as I know, she was a charter member.
Okay.
See, when the two churches went together, I hate to say this, but most of Grace members left.
Oh, they did?
But Kate and I were just stubborn enough, we weren't going to be shoved anywhere. I used to get out on Sunday morning running all over the neighborhood. At that time, I was not living where I am down Vandover in Maryland, right across from Jackson Davis. We were one of the first families that moved into West Bar. And so we were still there at that point, so all we had to do was cross the street. But I'd get out on Saturday to all the neighbors looking for some flowers to go on the altar over there on Sunday morning. And we eventually were able to buy one tray communion set out of aluminum. It wasn't silver in the thing. It should be back there somewhere. I never have gone looking for it. But then we moved up here. We bought the tent. Well, we didn't. One of the church sections did. Bought the 10 acres up here for us. Covered the deal.
Church sections.
Methodist churches, one of the, that helps people do this type of thing, and we bought these 10 acres up here.
And, well, they might have bought it, but they let you pay for it, I can promise you.
Well, I can guarantee you, Kate and my name have, through the years, have been on too many things that could have wiped us out.
Yeah. Well, over those years, you've been a trustee for many of those years, and I guess Cater was a trustee.
No,
he never was a trustee, but he ended up signing some notes over the years.
On the old Grace, he did.
Once you moved from the school to, was the first thing, did they have the trailers on the site when y'all moved, or was it just the house?
No, we had to have the trailers to come in before we could move out.
Okay.
Because, see, the house had, well, I guess we could have all squeezed into one room if we had to, but it really wouldn't have been all that convenient. Cater and my son and a lot of other members came up here and cleared this land of outhouses and buildings and whatever, but left the house itself standing.
That'd been, I guess, the center of an old farm place at one point, with
it was a farm up here
all around. And did they have to clear woods also before they built, or
some out here to the front where we see where the church is not where the trailers were.
Yeah.
They were out here.
Right on Fort King Road?
No, right out here on the hill.
Okay. But they were in front of where the church sits now?
Yeah.
And then where was the house?
Back up here.
Further, like behind where the church sits now?
No, more or less almost center of it.
Almost center, okay.
You're asking me to remember a lot of things, you know that?
And you're remembering them.
I'm not so sure. Because, see, when the mergers went through, I was not here a lot.
Yeah.
I lost 5 members of my family in 21 months, in 66 and 67.
So you were running back and forth.
And so teachers would cover my last class on Friday afternoons, and I'd head out as hard as I could for North Carolina.
Yeah.
I have even driven from Durham, North Carolina on Monday morning in time to teach my first class.
So Tim Goodman was the pastor until the merger with Laurel Street.
And then the church was given to Mr. Cooley.
Okay, but Mr. Cooley wasn't here, but
about 3 years.
yeah, it was a short period of time, wasn't it?
And then he only lived about 3 years after that.
So was he alive when this building was finished? But just it probably hadn't been finished long when he died, had he?
Well, let's see, what year was it? 69, I guess it was finally completed.
Yeah.
See, you asked me one day, why did we have 2 steeples?
That was going to be my next question.
And the only thing I could figure is we had services and Sunday school in that part back over there first while this was being completed.
Yeah. So the part that is now in 2006, Sunday school classes and the choir room and the busy bee room was the very first part of the final or the permanent building that we have now.
Well, see, we had I guess you'd call it a recreation hall in there.
Well,
so when we redid everything, that went because we had put it down there.
Yeah, but until then, that whole building was really fellowship hall and kitchen, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and in the beginning, while the sanctuary and the part of the building we're sitting in now was being completed, that was the sanctuary. That was the whole church in essence, wasn't it? Because you already had to tear down the house. And the trailers, I guess, at that point.
Well, the trailer section went to, where's the youth?
Westview.
Westview. We gave them to Westview.
And so when was this sanctuary dedicated? Do you remember?
Yeah, I wrote it. June of 1968, I guess it was. No, that was not in 68 either. That was when we unified, wasn't it? We went together.
Well, Laurel Street, the fire at Laurel Street Church was January.
It was
15th.
February the 8th, 1970, before it was completed.
Yeah. So the fire at Laurel
And then we
Street
went back in there in December.
Okay. The fire at Laurel Street was January of 68. And my understanding is that it was several months before Laurel Street came to grace, or the district said, we think this is a good plan for the two churches to unite and become a new congregation and build a building on the land that Grace had already purchased and was using with the trailers and the old farmhouse. And so all that took place sometime between January the 15th of 68 and what was the date in 70? That you gave to me?
March the, we were completed on March of 1971, actually.
Okay.
Oh, no, that's when we bought the new parsonage, excuse me, 1970.
Okay.
See, before all this went on, we had a parsonage back over here that we had bought.
Where was that?
I think I wrote it down. What was it? Colwyn Road.
Oh, right over, even closer to the church than the existing parsonage on Basswood.
And then, of course, after the merger, we bought Basswood, and that was sold.
Okay. Do you remember the Sunday? I'm sure you were here the Sunday that this building was consecrated.
Oh, yeah.
Was the bishop here that day? I would
District
imagine.
Superintendent was.
That was 1970, so Bishop Herrick, I guess, would have been our bishop at that time, and I'm not sure. I've never seen any records as to whether he was here or not.
As far as I know, well, they had Tim Goodman in here that Sunday, too.
Yeah.
They asked him to come back, and he did. Well, he's been back more than once to preach, but like I said, he gave up the ministry.
Yeah.
Even though he had walked these streets out here trying to get a church started.
Yeah.
But see, we've got so many churches here so close together that I think that has caused us never to grow like we should. You take this skip within some of the others all around us.
Well, and the other thing might be because we're just far enough off of Three Chops so that it's not visible if you're headed west on Three Chops.
That's a sore point, buddy.
How was that decision made?
Well, after the church went together, Cooley started talking about us giving up this land and buying down there where those houses, which is just a stripping.
Yeah.
We would not have had a parking area or anything, and Cater said, over my dead body.
Well,
He said, I promised that woman if she sold that land up there, our church would go up, and he said, our church is going up.
Well, and I doubt that the district would have, or the conference would have okayed that if you didn't have all the facilities you needed for parking and.
No, we wouldn't have had it. Well, you know what's there.
Yeah.
How close to Three Chops the houses are, or whatever. But it was for that reason he thought we ought to give up, because we wouldn't be noticed sitting up here on the hill.
Well, I'm trying to remember back to that date, and I think, if I'm correct, George Leitner was the district superintendent.
I think you're right on that score.
And as we sit here in 2006, George Leitner is now the oldest member of our annual conference.
And he's still living?
Yeah, he's still living. He sure is. And next week we'll go to annual conference, and George Leitner will say the opening prayer for our annual conference. So that guy carries a lot of history with him.
Well, see, the whole thing up here is when Tim came to my house and he found out I was a minister's daughter and all, I just felt like getting a new church started was something I could do for my father. Because I hate to say it, and you'll probably mark it out. But next to God, I thought my daddy was it. I did not feel he could do any wrong. He never left the church but what it was better than what he found it. And I trailed him a lot, visiting, too. So I just felt like I was going to do something that he would like.
Well, and in retrospect, buying this acreage and staying on this acreage was visionary, because this way we've had room to grow and to continue to maintain a beautiful facility, and we'll have room in the future to grow even more if that's what becomes necessary.
Well, these walls, can come down.
I know. All these walls in the back part of the sanctuary are temporary walls.
Yep.
And they were designed that way.
Because we were hoping to grow.
So the first years, Arthur Cooley was here when the church was actually consecrated and when it became St. Andrews, as opposed to being Grace and Laurel Street.
When the name was determined to be St. Andrews, he was given the church.
Now, the question I've always had, and I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, but do you know why they chose to call it St. Andrews?
Yep.
Okay.
It had to do with the St. Andrews in the Bible that was a traveling minister, I think, building churches during the time of Christ. Isn't that right?
He's one of Jesus' disciples. That's right. And that was a good compromise between Grace and Laurel Street. Was a name that wouldn't carry either name.
No.
But would be a new name. After Arthur Cooley, who was the next pastor? Do you remember?
Mr. Wright, I think, came in next.
Eugene White.
And as far as I know, he's still living too.
I'm certain he is. In fact, I think the only former pastor that's not still living is Arthur Cooley.
And like I said, he died about 3 years after he left here.
Yeah. Tell me about the early days of St. Andrews, after this building was completed and everything was getting established, as far as the Sunday school and the Bible school and all the different programs of the church.
Well, I guess you can sort of say I stood to the sidelines.
I doubt that, seriously.
Well, I had 3 children. One of them Dickie was still very small at the time, all this started. And to a degree, what was left, a few of us from Grace, felt like we were on the sidelines. But I'll tell you, 2 of the members of Old Laurel Street, they are now both gone. And they were 15 years older than Kate and I. But we became best friends. We traveled together. They acted the part of my children's grandparents when they were married. So it wasn't like I always stood to the side.
And who were they?
Margaret and Joe Pace. In fact, Margaret was a church secretary for how many? I don't know, were you here when she was still one? But I don't remember how. I'll tell you one thing, if we didn't have the money for something, she'd come right out and say, there's no money here for that and you don't spend it. So, I eventually did have a connection with Old Laurel Street.
Yeah.
And of course, we all sang in the choir together.
Yeah.
We even had a choir started in the Old Grace before, and Mary Cheap, which is Charles's wife,
yeah,
was our first pianist and organist,
Well, she was the first pianist and organist of St. Andrews too, wasn't she?
Yep, and then we hired Jean, and she's been here ever since. So they're the only 2 we've ever had.
Yeah, Jean's been here about 30 years, hasn't she?
If not more.
Yeah.
She's an old hand at it too.
Be sure to put that on tape, that you called her an old hen.
I didn't say hen, I said hen.
Oh, I thought you, never mind. As your children grew up and left home and all, you and Cater became more and more involved in the life of St. Andrew's Church.
Well, you can also say I really became more involved after I retired in '88 because I had more time. In fact, in less than a few months of me retiring is when the job of all the flower and taking care of the sanctuary and everything was given to me.
And you still got it.
And I still got it.
And you're still doing a good job with it.
I don't know about that part of it. But I didn't even come to Sunday school very often before I retired, actually. Because when I was teaching, when I finally got home in the afternoon, which is most times anywhere from 4 to 5 o'clock, and some times even later, because I had a math science club I had to deal with and a lot of other things, you know, once the kids left from school. But once I retired, I just had more time because, see, once I got home, those 3 children took over.
Yeah.
And it was only after they went to bed at night that my schoolwork came out to do. So on Sunday mornings, Friday was always test day. So I'd get up about 5 o'clock on Sunday morning and start grading papers for 5 classes. So I didn't get to Sunday school very much until after I retired.
But you remember probably the most active Sunday school class in this church now, aren't you?
Yeah, and see, by the time I retired, that's where I had to go to was that class. I never had. And, of course, Cater always came to the men's.
Yeah.
But
tell me what you remember about Christmases here.
here at St. Andrews?
Uh-huh.
Oh, we used to have a Santa Claus for the kids.
Who was that?
Oh, boy. Ed Miller, wasn't it? Charlie Gherkin, that's right.
Yeah. The music program here has always been a strong program, hasn't it?
Yep, it has been that. In fact, I get real perturbed sometimes on Sunday morning when the children sing not to see any more up there than what we have now. Because we used to just have that whole altar full of them.
Yeah.
But maybe our children will increase here as time goes on. Hope so.
I hope so, too.
It might be too late to bring back my daughter, though.
Well, we'll work on all these things. Anything else you want to add about anything to do with the church?
What, this one?
Yeah.
I'm afraid I might fuss about a lot of things, but I don't want anybody else to.
That's right. That's right.
I'm very protective.
It's your church, isn't it? If somebody else starts, and you'll be the first one to defend it.
I'm afraid so.
Yeah.
Too much so.
Just like you do with your preacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
Raise your right hand.
Oh, no, I'll tell you, you ought to know by now, if you do something I don't like, you're probably going to hear about it right.
Okay, well, Jessie, we really appreciate you taking the time to do this. It's an important part of the history of this church, and you are important. Your life and your contribution to this church will be remembered a long, long time after none of us are here to physically be present.
Well, I hope so. I just hope we will grow.
Yep. That's a good way to end it.